Good afternoon and welcome to today's Wednesday webinar. Today we're going to be talking about advanced workflows and sections in Formspace. So I hope everybody's ready to get some good info. Today I am your presenter. My name is Paige Parker. I'm one of the training and implementation specialists here at Eduphoria, and we're spread pretty thin today, so I am alone on this call, which means as we do questions, I'll be coming to them periodically, but we don't have anybody who's going to be answering questions in the background as we go. So I'll kind of be doing them in groups at the end of the specific sections. Before we jump in, we are trying to share information with everyone about our regional service center partnerships and the conferences that they are offering. We have this information posted on our online help section. So if you go to online help and you go to training and webinars, you will see in the upper right-hand corner upcoming events under Eduphoria conferences, and you'll find the full list of all of those Eduphoria conferences, so you can find your service center and register. You can register right there from that location. So we wanted to make sure everyone was aware that we have those out there. It's an opportunity for you to get some free training and also an opportunity for you to talk with us, because usually at least one of the trainers, sometimes two, are at each of the regional service center events, and you can talk to us there if you need to. I also want to point out that you can always get to our help section from anywhere in the system. In Strive, it's over on the left-hand side. In all of our other applications, it's in the upper right-hand corner. And then on the main page, it's at the top also. So you can click on help to get to our help section, which I was just showing a second ago. And from here, you can find information on any of the applications, including Formspace, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And then again, as always, I'm going to get you to ask your questions in the questions window that's part of the panel, and I will be checking in on those questions periodically, but we won't have someone constantly answering like we usually do, because we don't have anybody else on the call with me right now. So I'll be answering them in chunks as we go through the time. All right, so today we're going to be talking about some of the advanced features of Formspace, creating workflows, having multiple workflows for forms, creating sections in forms, and then we have a few little extras at the end, some tips and tricks that might make your job easier as the Formspace manager. And I want to talk, before we jump in, just a little bit about workflows. Workflows are your processes. So creating a workflow is going to move your electronic form through a process, just like a paper form goes first to one person and then to a next. You can do that with electronically with Formspace, so that your forms are going to move to whatever process you need. And we have some different types of steps in the workflow process that we'll be talking about as well. We'll also talk about creating multiple workflows for a single form, and the main reason to do that is so that you don't have to have multiple forms. So you don't want to have an absentee request for elementary, an absentee request for middle, and an absentee request for high school. You want to have one form with all of those schools in there, even if they have a different set of steps in their process. That way all your data stays together, and if you want to pull reports, you can pull reports that show you district information rather than having to look at individual sections or individual campuses and then pull it all together. And then sections just gives you different areas to fill out for different parts of the workflow. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and then some tips and tricks. Hopefully we'll have time to get to all of these, but we'll talk about form management a little bit and the Eduphoria community just briefly to show you where it is to help you get started with any forms that you're creating. Okay, we're not to the final questions yet. I'm going to jump into Formspace now and start talking about our topics. So I'm logged in as an administrator. I have full admin rights in Formspace. You may have manage rights for not everything, but some forms in your district. Either way, if you've got a manage tab, you can go in and work on those forms. So I'm going to click on my manage tab and look at the forms that I have set up in here. And so we're going to start with an absent from duty form that I have created just to talk about creating workflows. So here's a form that's already created. In fact, I think this form actually came from the community. I think I pulled it from the community. So there are some questions in the form, things that I want them to fill out. It's a pretty short form, but then I want to route it through a process. And to do that, I need to create a workflow. So I'm going to go to the Workflow tab. I will zoom in a little bit. It's probably going to make me zoom out at some point because it might cut some stuff off, but I'm going to try to zoom in a little and hopefully you can see what's going on my screen. So I'm going to go to the Workflow tab, and there's always going to be something there called Default under Workflow, but I need to go in and look at how that applies to me, to my schools, to my process. So I'm going to double click on where it says Default, and I can change my title. So I'm going to change it to absence from duty, just so that I'll know this is the process, this is the workflow for the process of dealing with absences. I can name it whatever I want to, and I can click my save button. I could also put a description in here and kind of write out what my process is going to be. That's not required, but it is an option. Also on this tab, and we're on the general tab, when I clicked on the workflow, I have the options of schools to include. So for this particular form, I'm going to say that all schools go through the same process, and we'll set it up as one workflow. And then we'll look at multiple workflows on a different form. So with that being checked off and ready to go, I'm going to click on my workflow tab up here, and this is where I actually create my steps. So I have a drop down button right here that says add a workflow step, and I have three choices, three options for creating a step in the process. So my first step is going to be an approval step, and that means I'm asking somebody to approve this form before it can go any further. I have two choices down at the bottom. I can say I want a specific staff member to approve it before it goes any further, or I can say I want a member of a group to approve it. So maybe it has to go to the principal at whatever campus, principal or manager, whatever department, that's who it's going to go to. So I'm going to say I want a member of a group to be approving this step. What it shows me here is all of the groups that I have created in the management application. So all of the groups that have a wrench beside them or a wrench on top of the little people, those are system groups that come from the profile. And then all of the groups that have a building, we don't have any building groups. So in your management system, you will have groups that have a building, and that's all the members, all the faculty from that building. But in here, I'm going to see system groups, which are created by their profile. So if a teacher has checked off that they teach second grade in their profile, they will be part of the second grade teachers group. If they checked off that they are a writing teacher in their profile, they'll be part of this writing teachers group. Those are all created by what they have checked in their profiles. These groups at the top that don't have a wrench are custom groups, and you can create whatever custom groups you want to in your system to then show up here as part of the list. So I can come down here and look, and I have a system group called principals, and I can click on that group of principals and say that's who I want to be that first step approver, and I'm going to click, see if I need there, and click save. And so it moved it up to the top. Now in my workflow step, it actually says that it'll be approved by principals in the system group. You might have some people who need to be part of this approval process that won't be in that principals group. So if I have maybe some department heads that need to approve absences, then I might want to go back and edit this step and create a custom group that includes principals and managers, and then I would manage who is in that group and who is not in that group. So any of these groups up here are managed by you. Any of these groups down here are created and managed by the individual users' profiles, but you can use either type of group, just depends on you know, if there's something that's not automatically generated by the profile, you can create it yourself, make it a custom group, and then use that custom group just like I used my principals group. So that's my first step. One thing that I want to do before I move on is that I want to say that for this step, let me go back here and click on principals again just to make sure. I want to make sure that I limit it to the school, because I don't want every principal in the district to get this approval request. I only want the principal at the campus where the requester is housed. So if I say limit to school and I'm requesting from the high school, it will only go to the high school principal because that's what I limited it to. So that's a way that you can have one workflow for your whole district and still have it go to a specific person at each campus, is by limiting to school and choosing a group. So even though this group of principals has a principal from every campus, it's only going to go to my campus because it's limited to school. And then I would want to save that. And that's step one. If I need another step in my process, maybe past the principal, I need a second approval step. And this approval step needs to be a specific staff member. So I'm going to find that staff member by typing in part of their name and searching. And maybe this is the HR person who is going to approve those absences. After the principal has said it's okay, then it has to go to HR, and Milo is going to be the approver. So I'm going to say save. I don't have to limit it to a campus now. Milo's a district level employee and it's a single person, so I don't have to worry about any of those other check marks. I'm just going to say it's an approval step and save. So maybe those are my two approvals, and now it's approved and ready to go. I still have a couple of options, and one of them is a notification step. I'll talk about FreeFlow in our next portion, but for right now, I'm just going to have a notification. And when you do a notification step, it's just going to send an email that lets somebody know what's going on. Maybe I need, maybe we have a group on each campus that creates or calls the substitutes, and maybe this is that group. So I'm going to select that group and say limit it to school, and that way the group is going to be notified, or the person from that campus, to call a substitute because I'm absent. So they just need to get an email knowing about that absence. Maybe I need another notification step that is going to send an email to the requester. And so whoever requested it is going to get an email showing that it was approved by these people, and then that the substitute manager was notified. So you can have approval steps and notification steps, however many you need. And if you're doing a notification, you can also include a note down here if you want to. That would be like a standard message that the recipients would get when they get their notification. And I would save that step, and now I have a 4-step process for managing this particular document. The way it works is when I submit the form, it's going to go to the principal for approval. It's not going to go any further until the principal either approves or denies it. If the principal approves it, then it moves on to the next step, which would be my HR approver. And it's going to wait there until that staff member approves it. And then as soon as that staff member approves it, it's going to notify, boom, boom, my 2 notification steps. So these don't have to wait on anything, but the approval steps do have to wait. So nothing, it doesn't move any further until action happens on an approval step. There's no action required on a notification step, so it just goes straight through. Okay, before I go any further, I want to talk about these buttons over on the right-hand side. The top one is a very important button. This is where I'm going to verify my workflow. So I'm going to click on Verify My Workflow, and it's going to show me all of my campuses and whether or not my process that I just established will work at each of those campuses. So I can see at Aqua Elementary, I've got a problem. I've got 3 people who can do step 1. I've got somebody who can do step 2, but I don't have anybody for step 3. So nobody's going to get notified to call a sub at Aqua Elementary. What that means is I need to go back and edit my group of substitutes and make sure there's somebody in there from each campus. The same is true from Blue High School. I've got a group of people that could approve step 1. I've got people who could approve step 2, but I don't have anybody to approve step 3. What I want to see is green check marks. So what I'm going to do for just a second is go back, close my workflow down, and I'm going to switch applications and go into management, and I'm going to manage my user groups. This is where you would create or manage any of those custom groups. So I'm going to change this to be the substitute manager from each campus, and I'm going to add some staff members in there. Let's see. Oops. Okay, so I have someone from one of the campuses who can be a member, and then well, I'm just going to use that one and hope we get at least one that's correct. I'm not sure which campus she's on. So I'm going to save that, and I would just want to make sure that my group, oh, I changed the name up here accidentally. And then let's see, do we still have, sorry about that. I clicked on the wrong thing. So now I have somebody in my group of substitute managers. When I go back to my form and look at that district forms, I'm going to go back and look at my workflow again, and I'm going to do the verify workflow, and I think it's going to be Blue High School that will now be correct. Yes, Blue High School has a check mark because the person I put in that custom group is from Blue High School. So now there's somebody who can complete every single step at that campus. Any campus that doesn't have a green check mark means I have a problem there, and I need to go and see, okay, there's nobody in step 3. Step 3 is that notification of the substitute manager. I need to make sure there's somebody in that group from Aqua Elementary. And I would do that for each of my campuses until I had green check marks for everything in my list. So that's how you can make sure that your process is going to work. Let it run the verify workflow, and then it will show you where your gaps are. I'm going to close my workflow because I'm in good shape for now, at least at one campus. I would go back and fix my group to include all of the campuses. And now I'm going to go over and check and see. Doesn't look like I have any questions posted yet. I hope that's a good sign. So let me minimize that again, and we'll talk about our next section. So multiple workflows. This is a single workflow where all schools go through the same process. It goes to the school principal or manager, school principal or building manager, who they would be in that first group. It goes to an HR person, and then it goes to the notification per campus. So it's the same process, even though the people are different, because I used groups for that campus principal and for that substitute manager. It can be a different person from each campus, but the process is the same for all schools. So only have to have one form, and every school in the district can use it, and it'll just go to the right people for their campus. Sometimes the process can't be the same for every campus. So I'm going to look at an example where that is the case. This is an IMAT request form. So requesting to get some money to get some materials using IMAT funds. So here are the questions. The requester's going to fill out what they're looking for, what's the name of the resource, how they're going to use it, what's the unit price, all that kind of stuff. So I'm requesting to use some money. When I go to the workflow tab, I have two separate processes. So I have two different workflows, but it's the same form. I don't want to make two separate forms. I want everybody to use this form. I want all of the data to be in one form so that I can not have to pull it together later. I want it all to stay in one place, but I want it to go through the right process for that campus. So if I go to the secondary schools workflow, I just opened it up. This is secondary. You'll notice that instead of having all schools checked like I had in the last one where we had a single workflow, now I'm going to limit it to only the schools that follow this particular workflow. So it's going to be all my high schools and my middle school. So I've checked off the specific campuses that are going to follow this process. When I look at the process itself, I can see that it's going to be approved by an individual person, then it's going to be approved by another individual person, and then another individual person, and then it will notify the requester. So this is not using any groups at all, but this is the process. These are the 3 people who manage all of those requests on the secondary side. I can still go over and verify my workflow and make sure that I have all of those people have access to all of those campuses, and so it's going to work for everybody. So that's what happens if I put in a request at the secondary level. If I put in a request at the elementary level, the process is different. It's limited now to my elementary campuses only and not my high schools and middle schools. And when I go to the workflow tab, it goes to an individual staff member first, and then it notifies the elementary principal and the requester. So it's a different process, but it's the same form. So I want all the data to stay in the same place. I'm going to let them complete the form as one form, and it's just going to go through different processes depending on where the requester is coming from. I could create another workflow by saying I want to add a workflow. Gave me a new one. I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to call it departments, because this would be anybody that's not at a campus. I'm going to limit it to my facilities and services. Let's see, I'm going to say these are all where my departments live. So where's my technology? There we go. So I'm going to select all of those that are not my campuses, and they will follow a different process. So I'm going to save that with the name and my campuses, and then I'm going to go to workflow and build my workflow for this group. So maybe I have an approval step. This might be a shorter one because everything goes to the same person. I'm going to say, I am that person, and I'm going to save it. And so for everybody, it goes to me, and then they get notified. So I'm going to say this is going to be a requester notification step, and that's it. We're done with this process. I can verify it. It's going to work for everybody, so that's great because it's not going to groups. And again, I'm going to save that workflow and close it. And now I have 3. So anybody in my district can fill out this form to use I'm at Money to purchase materials. Depending on where they are in the district, it will go through a different process to get approval the way it needs to function for their assignment, but all of the data will stay in one form, stay in one place. Okay, I want to check and see if we have any questions. Okay, if you have a change in staff in the workflow, do you have to change each workflow, or is there a mass change? There is a change option. Very good question. Let me go over to, I think it's under settings. No, it is not under settings. Oh, I think it is. Let me go to, it is, I think it's here. Let me look. Give me just a sec. Yes, so I can go in and say, under the Manage tab, I want to go to General Options. So I'm not within that specific form. I'm under General Options, and I'm going to say I want to use the Replace User utility. So if somebody left, I would say find this person. So Kirsten left the district, and the person who replaced her is Jonathan Brown. So now in any workflow in Formspace, any place where Kirsten was the approver, she is going to be replaced by Jonathan, and it'll put one person in another person's name and replace that staff member anywhere that they're used. So that's faster than going and finding them everywhere that you want to use them. Another thing that's faster, if you have principals, when you use that group, I can replace the principal in the group, and that will automatically replace it in every form that uses that group. So when you use groups instead of individuals, like I did in the absence from duty request, and we went in and used a system group, I might have used the system group principals 10 times in 10 different forms. If I replace that one principal who left in the group in the management application, then it will automatically update that system group for every form that pulls from that system group. So that makes it faster for you to get those updated. Very good question. Okay, PD form, principals approve and they are on campus. How do I get their PD workflow for superintendent approval? Okay, I am probably going to have to respond to you, Mary, after the session because I'm going to need a little bit more information about that. So either if you can get some more details in there about what the form, like I'm not sure what you mean by PD form. So if you could give me some more details, or I will email you after the session and we can talk about it then. Does that change historic data or does it remain with the original person? The data actually stays with the form and not with the person, so it would not change your historical data. It would, the form data does not matter who the approver was, so the data would all stay together with that form. And I'll talk about what you can do with that form data in a little bit. That's one of our tips at the end. Okay, let's see. All right, that's all we've got on questions right now. So I'm going to move on to the next portion, which is sections. I'm going to get out of this workflow. In fact, I'm going to go into a totally different form. I have a form here called Bullying, Intimidation, and Harassment Reporting Form. So this is a district-wide form. Anyone who feels like they've been bullied or intimidated or harassed can use it to report. And I have quite a few questions in this form. This first section, clearly someone is reporting what happened to them. And then down toward the bottom, I have some questions that are to be completed by the administrator. So I can do this in multiple ways. I'm going to start with the simplest, which is adding sections in, and then we'll talk about breaking your form up a little bit more. So on this form, I'm going to go to my workflow, and right now I don't have a workflow set up. But before I even do that, I want to create sections because I know already from my questions that I have two different people who have to be able to fill out this form. The requester, which is the person who does this top part, and then the administrator who's going to do this bottom part. So since I already know I've got two people working on this form who have to actually fill out stuff, not just approve or notify, but they have to complete questions, then I need two separate sections for that. So I'm going to go into workflow sections, and you'll notice it automatically generates a section called requester. It doesn't show up over here, but you can see that all these questions are currently assigned to somebody. So what I need to do is come in here and make a new section, and it's going to be called section 1. I wish it was called section 2 because to me requester is section 1, but because it's automatically generated, my first section is called section 1. So I'm going to call it section 1, or it calls it section 1, and I'm going to scroll down in my questions, and this is not really a question, but I'm going to assign it to section 1 because this is where the administrator takes over the process. This is the last question that the requester does. This is an information box, instructions box, but it starts where my section 1 stuff goes, so I'm going to put it with that. And then all of these I need to assign to section 1. If I had a third person who was going to need to do some of these questions, I could add a section 2. And then I could say these bottom questions need to go to section 2. So whoever I assign to that section will get those. In this instance, right now, I only have one other person involved. So I'm going to say all of these questions go to section 1. So I have two different people completing questions on the form, the original requester and the person that I'm going to assign to do section 1. And I'll say okay. And then I'm going to publish my form. That's what that little pop-up box said. Be sure to publish it so that those changes will be saved. So I did that. And I could have also changed my name of my workflow here. I'm going to come in and do that now. I'll just say this is this is going to be an HR workflow. So this will go to all schools because it could be anybody from any department. And then I'll go over to my workflow and add my first step. So my first step is going to be an approval step because it needs action. So in this case, I'm going to pick a group member. That's going to be that principal's group because I want somebody from every campus to be able to do this. I'm going to limit it to each school. So there's going to be one person from each campus, whoever the person is in that group. Now, if my system group isn't what I need it to be for this, I could make a new group up here, remember, that said principals or principals and APs, principals and managers, whatever I wanted to call it. I could make a custom group if I needed to. I still want to limit it to school so that not everybody's getting everything. And that first section, well, actually before the approval part happens, all the requester stuff gets filled in by the requester. When it gets to this approver, they are going to do all the section 1 questions. So this is where I assign those section 1 questions to this person. They'll fill out their questions and they'll click approve in order to move it on to the next person. So I'm going to save that. And we're going to look over here at verify workflow. We're still going to have some issues because we don't have a principal at every campus. So you can see at facilities, I don't have anybody in my principal group. I would need to build that custom group that includes somebody from facilities, from multiple campuses, from the service center. So all of my actual campuses are good because they have somebody in the principal group. I would need to create that custom group to take care of these non-campus people that might be filling those out. Okay, so it's going to go to an approver who will fill out those questions and then hit approve. What happens next? Well, I'm going to go back to my form and talk about it just a little bit more. When I go back to my questions, and it comes down, I come down here and it says, scroll. My last question says, what action resulted from the investigation or conference? The matter was closed, there was a reprimand to the offender, or it was referred on to the next level. So if it's referred on to the next level, I need this form to go somewhere else after this person approves it. So I'm going to go back into my workflow and open it back up and workflow. So I need something else to happen here. Depending on your process, it may just be a notification step that's going to go to somebody in HR, and then that person is going to take it from there. Or it might be a FreeFlow step. So I want to talk about what a FreeFlow step is. This is sort of like a gatekeeper. Formspace does not have the ability to do if-then logic. So I can't say if it came from an elementary school, then send it to the elementary superintendent. If it came from a secondary school, send it to the secondary. We don't have that ability. But you can have a gatekeeper who gets the form and they look at it and say, this is high school, I'm going to send it to the high school superintendent. So this FreeFlow step can direct it in ways that you can't automatically do. So I would go in and say, who is my gatekeeper on this FreeFlow? Maybe it's going to be Milo over in HR. And I'm going to find him. There we go. And I'll save that. Now what happens next is Milo gets it, and Milo manually types in the email address of the person it should go to next. So they're going to look at the form, see what principal approved it, what the principal said needed to happen, and then they'll determine where it goes from here. That's what a FreeFlow step would do for you. Again, the approval step waits on the approval person to fill out their questions and click the approve button. The FreeFlow step pauses the process and waits for this gatekeeper to send it on to the next person, the person that gets that email will have a button that says continue workflow. And so once they do what they have to do and click continue workflow, then it will move on to the next step. So I could then add a step in here that was a notification step that will notify the requester or the individual person who reported. So this step actually directs it to two people. It directs it to Milo as the gatekeeper, and then Milo is going to manually type in the email address of the person it should go to next. And then when they click continue workflow, it'll go on to the notification step. And again, I can verify my workflow. I'll see the same issue that I had with those non-campus buildings because I never added anybody into the group for them, but my campuses should all work correctly because they have a principal, they have access to this staff member, and then it will get notified. The person who gets emailed by Milo, by the gatekeeper, does not have to be part of any of your processes. This sort of takes a pause, goes outside of the workflow to a person that needs to be included, and then when they click continue, it comes back into the workflow and moves it on from there. Okay, I was checking for questions. Okay, so Ronnie, I'm going to show you something in a minute that hopefully will answer your question about who approved it historically, because we're going to talk about getting the data out of the system each year so that it kind of gives you a snapshot for the year. Hopefully that will answer that question. When the question is section 1 or required, we are unable to submit the form. It tells us to complete the required questions. Am I doing something wrong? Kathleen, my guess is that something is not set up correctly about the workflow, because you should be able to submit the form as the requester with only the requester questions answered. So I'll need to go in and look at that form. If you would email me, Paige, P-A-I-G-E, at eduphoria.net and give me the name of the form, I'll go, form and district, please, and I'll go in and look and see if I can find what's hanging that up. This can be an outside district email as well for the FreeFlow. That is correct. Good point, Tracy. If I go in on the FreeFlow, I have the ability to, no, I don't on this one, not on a FreeFlow. I do on notification steps have the ability to do an outside email, but I don't on a FreeFlow step. So a FreeFlow step has to be somebody in my district, a staff member or group, or the requester themselves. So if I had additional questions, want to let them see what's happened so far and let them answer something from there, I can. But the only step that you can do notification to outside email addresses is the notification step. So if you do have somebody who doesn't work for the district, that can be part of that. It might be that you need to notify that outside person to know to contact somebody in the district and give their 2 cents at that point. But you can only do an outside email as part of a notification step. Okay, I want to talk about pages for just a minute. So hopefully the multiple workflows and multiple steps make a little bit of sense here, that we've had sections and we have different questions assigned to different people in the section. And that would, when I submit the form, it's going to take my answers, move it on to the next person, they'll put in their answers and go from there. If I look at my questions on this form, this is kind of a long form. It's quite a few questions for the requester and then several questions for the second person who does the rest of it. So I can break a form into pages if I want to. It doesn't make sense to me to do it on a form that has like 3 or 4 questions, but something this long, it does make sense. So over on the right-hand side, you'll see I automatically have page 1 because I've got questions and they have to be somewhere, so it creates that page for them. But I can make a second page if I want to, and now I have 2 pages to my form. And once I've created a second page, I can reorganize things here on those pages. So I'm going to find, I'm going to leave that, I'm going to edit this one, but I'm going to leave that one on page 1 so that everybody can see it. And then I'm going to go, this will be the first question that my administrator or my section 2 person has to answer. So I'm going to move it down to page 2. And then I'll come up and get the second question that the administrator has to complete, and I'll move it down to page 2. So I'm going to do that for all of my page 2 questions. And someone may have this question in mind, can I just move page 2 up? Unfortunately, no. When you move page 2 up, it puts it right below page 1. It doesn't move it up one item at a time. So if I'm only moving items, then I have to move them one at a time down to the bottom of the page below my second page. So I'm going to do that. And then I've got 2 more. And 1 more. So again, I'm leaving that instruction box on page 1, and my page 2 will have all of the questions for the administrator, and I'll click Save. So now I'm looking at page 2. This is what the administrator will see. If I go back to page 1, this is what the requester sees. And I'm going to come down to the bottom here and edit where I said all questions below. I'm going to change that to be all questions on page 2. Oops. 2 will be completed by the appraiser or the administrator. So that's the last thing that the requester will see, is that they don't need to do anything on page 2. So they've done their part and they'll click the submit button. Then when the administrator gets it, they'll see that they have to do the page 2 part. These are all of my questions that are assigned to that section 1 person, and they will answer those questions here. Pages are not necessary. You can have a single document that has multiple sections on it, and I usually just go in and add a question and make that question an instruction block and type section 3 to be completed by, and whoever that's going to be. And so then I can break it up and have multiple sections on a single page. But if you want to, you can divide it into pages and have a page for the requester, a page for the administrator, and you might have a third page if there was a third level and a third set of questions that would be your section 2 people. So that's how you divide your pages up. That doesn't change anything about my workflow. My workflow is still based on the sections. So it's still going to go through the same process, and it's still going to be my sections assigned to the same people in that process, even though those section 1 questions now reside on page 2 of the form. It's just a management or organizational thing about the form. Okay, let me peek at questions. Does the requester see the administrator's questions? They can see the questions, but they can't click on them and answer them. And then if there are required questions on both pages, will the requester be able to submit even though? Yes. So the question is if there are required questions on both pages. So I have questions that I'm requiring the requester to answer, and I have other questions that I'm requiring the administrator to answer. Even though they're required, yes, the requester can submit once they have done all of their required things. So that means anything that's required and assigned to requester has to be done before I can click submit my form. Even if there's stuff that's in section 1 that's required, that's not required of me, oops, except for that one. As long as there's nothing required of me that hasn't been completed, I can submit my form. And then the section 1 person will have to do all of their parts before they can click and move the form along. These are all really good questions. Yes, Mary, they can see the questions. They just can't click on them and complete them. So they will know what the questions are that go from there. They will not see who is assigned to answer those questions, but they'll see what the questions are. Okay. So that little box that popped up was asking me, I said I had made changes to my workflow, I've made changes to my sections. Whenever you edit the sections, you need to publish that form, and that's going to save the changes that you just made to that form. So anything that you do, and you'll get a pop-up message reminding you to do it, but you want to make sure when you're ready for people to use your form that two things are true. One, my publish has a green arrow, and two, I have active and a green dot over here. Until those things are both green, my users are not going to be able to see or use these forms. So I want to make sure that that's done. Okay, let me look at my questions list again and see where we are. All right, I'm going to go ahead and talk about form management just a little bit, and I think this is going to answer a question that came up a little bit earlier. So in any form, I can go to my settings tab, and I can see multiple things here. I can import document questions, and for me, this is a huge shortcut in building a form. So if I were going to create a new form, let me just pretend like I'm going to create a new form for a second, and I'm just going to call it play. And I'll put it in general forms and begin editing. If this is going to be a district-wide form and I need for them to select their campus, I came from a district that had 42 campuses, and I hated to have to type them all every single time that I built a form. So I like to go in and say, import document questions. I'm going to find that absent from duty form that we just did, and that one doesn't have it. Maybe it was the IMAT one. Let me go to the IMAT form. So I'm going to go to IMAT, and where's my campus? Question name, type of research name. Well, I know I have one in the other one. One more time. Let me go to the bullying. So if I go to bullying, this is going to be my question that I want right here. It doesn't say, but that would be my my location, my campus. So I'm going to uncheck everything except location of incident, which is going to be my list of all of my schools and departments, so that I don't have to do, well, it doesn't seem like this is going to be faster because I got so many questions to uncheck, but, oh, there's my uncheck all button. So I'm going to uncheck all, and then I'm going to say I only want the location of the incident, and I'm going to import that question. So now when I go to my questions, there's my drop down of all of my campuses, and I don't have to do that question every time I need it. The other way that I do it is I have this reusable questions form up here, and you'll notice that I'll leave it in draft form so it doesn't show up to any of my users. Nobody goes in and accidentally clicks on it because they can never see it because I'll leave it in draft. But what I have in there are a few questions that I use over and over again, my list of schools, or my list of schools plus departments, which is a longer list depending on the form. Whatever questions that you use multiple times, that's what I put there. And so when I'm making a new form, I can go in to settings and I can say import questions, and I do my reusable. That's a shorter list for me to pull from. So I can say uncheck everything except school and department and import it. And that's really fast, and that's a way to sort of shorten your workload on building those forms, especially when you have a long list if you're at a larger district. Another thing that you can do is assign the form. So you might be the creator, but you're not necessarily the manager. So I can set the form up, and right now I'm going to go in and I'm even going to delete these questions because that's something for that other person to fill out, or maybe they said, can you please give me school and department? So I'll give them that list. From this point on, I want somebody else to work on it. They're going to manage the form. It's their questions. I'm just setting it up for them. So they don't have the rights to do that, but I do. I can go into my settings and I can say I want to add somebody in there. So I'm going to add myself in, and I'll pick me. I got to zoom out a little bit. There we go. So I have to pick me, and I have a choice. Is this going to be someone who can see reports or someone who can manage? Manage includes reporting. Reporting does not include managing. So if I give them manage rights, that means they can create questions, they can edit the document, they can do anything they need to do, but only with this one document that I'm assigning to them. So I'm going to say I want this person to be able to manage. I'm going to say select user, and now I'm out. I'm going to tell Paige, go in, the form is ready. You can add your questions. You can build your workflow. You can do everything that you want to do. You're in control of that form. I still have access to it, but this person now has the ability to totally manage that form. And all I had to do was give it a name and give it a manager. And that's faster for me than I can have other people creating some of those forms. So that to me is a tip and something that helps out a little bit. To answer the question earlier about historical data, my recommendation would be to keep data a year at a time. I want to have the whole district together in a single form. So I have this form that is for my whole year for every school. But at the end of the year, I want to go into reports, and I want to do form analysis, and I'm going to export it to Excel, not the summary, but export all of the data. I don't know if there's actually any data in here or not, but oh, I forgot to pick a form. So I have to go in and say my bullying form, I want everything, and I want to export it to Excel. It's going to generate an Excel spreadsheet that will have all of the fields from all of the questions. So there's everything. I don't actually have any data in there, but I would if anyone had completed the form. And then I can save this as 17-18 bullying data. So I've captured my historical data for that year. Then after I've saved my spreadsheet of last year's data, I'm going to go into that particular form. So I'm going to manage the form again, go into the settings. So I'm back in that bulleting form. I just exported all of last year's data. Now I'm going to click settings, and I would say erase all document responses. So I'm blanking out my form. I'll do that now. Blanking out my form to start over with a new year. So I have last year's data with all of the historical information and the people who approved it last year in a spreadsheet that's outside of the system, and then I can blank all my data and start over with a clean slate for the new school year. This is something that I recommend doing at the end of the year. So if you didn't do it last year and you've already started using your forms, I wouldn't do it midstream. I would go ahead and finish out this school year, but then I would save everything historically, and I would get a new document each year. That doesn't mean I have to create a new form over here. I'm using the same form, I'm just blanking it out and putting new data in it. So rather than have an 18-19 bullying form, a 19-20 bullying form, I'm just going to save the 18-19 data as a spreadsheet, erase all document responses, and start over for the new school year. So that's a way that you can, keep all of your forms simplified, only one form for everybody in your district because of multiple workflows, and for each year because you can export and start over at the beginning of each year. And then the last thing I said I would talk about is our community, and I have, I think, 3 minutes. So I'm going to click on Eduphoria Community just to show you that we do have some categories out there. And if you're thinking of building a form, come out here and look and see what somebody else has done first. Like if I go to Human Resources, let's say you're managing the sick leave bank and you want to have a form. See what someone else has done. You can always tell up at the top who created it and when they created it. You can look over the form and say, okay, well, this is exactly what I want, except I need to change this information up here. It would be faster to import this document and edit that one question than it would be to create everything else that's part of that form. So you can do that. You can find any form. In fact, this is that from Duty form that I told you I thought I had taken from the community. Here it is. And you just click on the button that says Import Document, and then it will show up. In fact, it's going to ask me where to put it, I think. I say import document, it says, do you want it in district forms? Where do you want it to be? I would say district and put it in general, or maybe put it in HR. You can have whatever categories you want, and then it will import. And for me now, it's going to be over here under HR. There it is right there. So you can borrow forms from the community and then edit them however you want to. One last thing that I would say about district forms versus school forms, I would not create a new form for every school if it's something that everybody has to have. I would make that a district form and use my workflows to manage it for each of my campuses. The only thing I would put in school forms are things that no other school has except for that one. So if you have one campus that has a program that none of your other campuses have and they need a form for that program, that could be a school form. But anything that applies to everyone, I would do it as a district form and then use my workflows to route it to the right places for those campuses. Okay, that's the last of my tidbits. Let me look to see. Okay. Okay, Ronnie, will you do me a favor and email me so that I can remember to look over your questions and get back to you after it's over with, because you have some specific questions as well. And then I have one more in the list type questions. The first choice is automatically chosen, so the question isn't actually required. Is this going to be changed? In the list type questions, the first choice is automatically chosen. Okay, let me go into my form that I was just playing with. And I'm going to say I want to do a new question, and it's going to be a list. So whatever I put in here, I think you're saying that it automatically picks the default. So if I put yes or no, and then I'm going to get rid of that one. So when they go, yes will automatically be selected. You can, if you want to, I see what you're saying. I could make it required, but even if they skipped over that question because yes is filled in, it's required. You could say this first one is going to be, please select your answer. So that's what they will see. And then I could add yes and no. And now the default is going to be, please select your answer. So if they didn't answer it, you would know, because that's what would be the answer choice. I don't know about any changes in the future, simply because I know that Formspace is not next on the list, Forethought is. So I don't know when any additions would be made. I will, however, do that as a feature request. So it'll be in the queue. I just don't know when a change is going to happen with Formspace. Okay, I want to thank y'all for your time this afternoon. You will be getting an email with a link to the recording if you are interested in that. And of course, we always post them on our help section. So if you want to find it later on, you can always go back to help, go back to training and webinars. It will be under miscellaneous because it's Formspace, and it will be posted right up here, and it'll say watch the recording. So you can always go back and find the recorded webinars there if you need to. Thanks again. Hope you have a great afternoon, and hope to see you next time on our Wednesday webinar. Bye-bye.